They're all right. Hey everyone, it's Kate, and hopefully we have sound now. If you're watching, you can let us know if you can hear me. And I am going to finish up my chai tea today. We have a lot to cover. I'm going to show you how to do the sleeves and also some tips for hemming it. Off camera, I sewed up the side seams, and I just want to show you, I did a narrow zigzag and then trimmed the seam allowance to 1/4 inch and then did a regular zigzag right next to the narrow zigzag. And that makes a nice stretchy seam that hopefully won't break. And here is what the chai tea sleeve looks like. It looks like a giant football. And the first step is, for sewing the sleeve, is putting it right sides together and sewing along this seam. I used a straight stitch because it's not going to have to stretch. And then I trimmed it to 1/4 inch and pressed it open. After you sew that seam, you fold the whole thing wrong sides together along this long fold line. And you end up with a sleeve that looks like this. And it's nice because you don't have to hem it because the fold here is your hem. And I'll show you how to sew it into the armsceye. So here's my armsceye. I have sewn up the side seam as I showed you, and I'm gonna mark this notch. So I like having all these pins where the notches are because I can use them in the future. So I have my shirt inside out, and I'm gonna find, this is the seam at the end of the football that I sewed earlier. And I'm going to match that up with the side seam. And I've got a pin right here. And I'm going to keep, I have the side seam pressed toward the back, so I want to keep it going in that direction. And then I just go to the next pins, which are really the next notches, and match those up and pin it. And then go up here to the top, the shoulder seam, and pin that. And then around to the other notch, match those pins up. And it is 3 layers, so you do have to make sure that they're all staying together. But then I'm just gonna use a couple of these other pins to pin in between the notches. And it's really, knit sleeves are really pretty easy because you can stretch. It's not as hard as a woven sleeve, but I still do pin, and I go nice and slow, which you will see when I sew it. Let's make sure and there we go, another pin. And now I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and show you how to sew it. Here we go. So whenever I'm sewing in a circle, I like to not put the fabric around the arm of the machine. I like to sew kind of on the inside of the circle, and I know it's a little bit confusing, but hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. And as I said, this whole, this shirt has a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which is pretty generous for a knit, but I like it because then you really do have some options for making it smaller or bigger, and you do end up trimming the seam allowances, which makes it so they're not too bulky. So I just go from one pin to the next, nice and slow, and I am going to back stitch. I have this on my narrow zigzag. I actually am using a, oops, stop going back. This is a newish machine for me, and the back stitching function is kind of confusing. So I just go a few inches, reposition, make sure that everything, all three layers are lined up, and I can feel that there's no puckering. So I kind of do a little finger sweep before I sew the next few inches. And let's get these lined up. Sleeves are just slow going. I mean, I have plenty of times in my life tried to sew sleeves in quickly, and it ends up taking a lot more time because you have to rip and you have to get the puckers out, and so just a few inches at a time. And I am stretching a little bit so that the sleeve and the armsceye line up. Hopefully I have it all right. It's a little bit disconcerting to get everything set up on live TV, but I think I got it. Here we go. It does take a minute, but so I have it right sides together. Almost done. Hopefully you guys are having a good week. We're having a good week here. The weather's really nice. It's really cold in the morning, like 30 something, but then it warms up to about 76. So when I walk to work in the mornings, I have a lot of layers, and then I have to put them all in my backpack to walk home. But the leaves are definitely changing, getting ready to fall off the trees. All right, so I'm going to head over to the overhead camera and make sure the iron's on. So hopefully I don't have any puckers in here, but at this point I would check carefully for puckers. And I'm going to show you the other sleeve, how I I did the narrow zigzag and then trimmed and then did a regular zigzag, and then I pressed the seam allowance toward the sleeve, and I'm going to show you on the one I just sewed how I do that. So just pretend that I've done all the sewing I need to do, which I have not yet. But I love ham for pressing curves. And so I'm just putting the sleeve on the ham and letting the curve fall along the curve of the ham. And I can feel that the seam allowance is going toward the sleeve. And some knits like to get shiny if you press them too vigorously. So I get the steam going and just really gently press. I'm really not pushing, just gently pressing, and then I let it cool under my hand. and it will stay in place. Fabric remembers the position it's in when it cools. I don't know how, but it does. So I just like to let it cool in place and would go all around. If I had done all my seam finishing and everything, I would go all the way around and press it nice and smooth. So that's how you do the sleeves. And now I'm going to show you how to hem it. I have 3 magical products I use when I do any hem, but definitely knit hems. So I have, this is a knit stay tape it's called, and I'm using it in black mostly so you can see it, but we also have it in white. But it's a really fine stay tape. It's a fine interfacing, and it has iron-on little beads on one side, and it does stretch a little. And I iron it to the base of my hem, which makes it really stable, makes the hem stitches look really nice, and also makes it so the hem doesn't flip up in the future. Today, I am using this double-sided fusible stay tape to hold the hem in place, and I'll show you how I do that. But I'm finding that it doesn't always wash out like I want it to after I've sewn my hem. So I also like Wonder Tape, which is a Dritz wash away 1/4-inch double-sided tape, which is very similar to the double-sided fusible stay tape. And my third secret weapon is this kimono silk thread. It's 100 weight, which means really, really fine. And because it's silk, it's really slippery. So I use it to baste my hem in place before I sew it. And I do take a lot of steps for my hems, but I hate to have an ugly hem. I hate to put all the work into my project and then do the hem really fast and have it kind of ruin all the work I just did. So this is how I do it. Let me see if I can show you. So you can see that I've fused the stay tape first, and then I fuse the paper. So the double-sided fusible stay tape has paper on one edge, and you fuse the paper to the stay tape, and then I press up my hem, and then I remove the paper, and I remove this one. I've kind of got it all set in about for most of the hem, but this is the final few inches. So I've got the double-sided stay tape tucked inside there, and I can just press it in place. And now my hem is really held down, and when I top stitch it, it's going to stay in place and not pucker. So I like to top stitch from the top, and as you can see from the top, i.e. the right side of the fabric, I really can't see where to sew my hem. So I do one final step, and it really seriously takes 5 minutes. I get some of the kimono silk thread, and I just quickly baste my hem in place from the wrong side. And I've made a double thread here so that I can make sure you can see it, but usually I just use a single one. And as I said, the kimono silk thread is super fine and super slippery. So even if you sew on top of it, you'll still be able to pull it out. So almost to the end here. I'm doing really big stitches. I don't usually do stitches this big, but I left a little more inches than I planned on. So once I get my basting done, and there we go. I'm going to cut this. So then on the right side, I can see where to sew, and I will know that I am catching the hem on the back. I'm going to use a triple stitch for this, and I don't need to do it on camera, but the triple stitch on my machine is my favorite. It's a stretch stitch, and it looks, I think, really professional. You can also use a you can also use a zigzag, or any stitch that will stretch will be great for your hem. So I still have a few more steps, but after I hem it and finish up this final sleeve, I will have another beautiful chai tee. And this really is my new favorite t-shirt. It's not too tight, not too loose. It's really flattering. I like the wider neckline that's not actually low. And the sleeves are really ingenious. So I recommend the pattern for sure. And I will include links to all of my other chai tee construction videos on, if you're watching this on YouTube. Next Saturday, which is just in a few days, I am going to show you how to make some double-sided woven napkins with fringe. It's a really fun project for your own holiday table or for gifts for others, because it is time to start thinking about making gifts. So we will have quite a few gift videos coming up. And thank you for being patient. I'm sorry about the volume issue, but we're figuring it out. And I hope to see you on Saturday for the woven napkins. And then next week, I'm starting a series on sewing with wool. So that will be really, really fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.